ICE activity increases in central Ohio. Welcome to Columbus on the Record. I'm Mike Thompson. Immigration and Customs Enforcement agents have been detaining people in Ohio for close to a year. But reports this week indicate that ICE activity has increased sharply. Immigration advocates report an increase in detentions. Social media channels feature an increase in images and videos of what appear to be immigration arrests in the Columbus area. Columbus City Police and city officials confirmed the activity and renewed their vow not to help federal agents conduct immigration operations. ICE says the efforts are to uphold public safety, but Mayor Andrew Ginther pointed to crime stats that show the city's murder rate is down and the murder solve rate is up.
These statistics are important because they show our city is the safest it's been in years. And they paint a picture of trust between Columbus residents and law enforcement is the strongest it's been in some time. We are building the rapport between police and residents that we have long sought. And this questionable federal operation could erode and undermine that hard-earned trust.
Stanley Gates, the Trump administration says it is just carrying out operations to detain and deport immigrants who are here illegally, undocumented immigrants. Why shouldn't the city provide some support to that operation if it's just adhering to the law?
Well, it's not in the city charter. And so, I first applaud the city for their stance and what they're doing to try to make sure that residents are safe. This country was founded by immigrants. I think of folks at this table, folks that are watching. Most likely your parents, your grandparents came from a different country. And so, I think that even when we look at the research too, I saw a stat that 1/3 nationally and over half of the cities that were doing these crackdowns involved non-criminals, right? And so I think when we go back to the root of what folks talk about, I think of even just the Black community. We know this story very well of government going unchecked. It's been told that it's for our own good, and whether that's slave catching, COINTELPRO, stop and frisk, history's shown that enforcement without trust makes justice disappear.
Terry, how is this, they're targeting Hispanic people for the most part, and how is this not racial profiling when some of the folks there are detaining are naturalized citizens in some cases? They are here legally on work agreements or on asylum. They're here legally, but they're still being detained.
Well, I don't know whether they're targeting or not. One key person who's an experienced legal eagle at City Hall said, go back and look at the tape again. And I did, and I realized what he said, if you carefully read it, he really wasn't threatening to impede or stop what ICE is doing. One of the bigger questions, however, is in the past, and we saw it happen in the Boston, Rhode Island area with those two shootings, having local, state, and federal cooperation is important. So as long as the city is not doing anything to impede federal operations, enforcement of federal law, or there's any other kind of violence or other things, I don't think there's going to be a problem. But part of it is posturing, because remember, Andy Ginther wants to stay to the left of the city council president who wants to run against him in 27. So I think the mayor is posturing, but he didn't really say anything that's too over the line because he doesn't want to threaten the flow of federal money in the future by being somebody violating the law.
So, Jake, the city officials really can't do anything. The federal agents are here. They're operating lawfully. You may disagree with them and their tactics, but the city can't tell them not to, enforce the law, right?
Yeah, I think the city's doing all it can, which is really distancing itself from what's happening. And something I'd add here is that part of the sell from the Trump administration is we are going after the worst of the worst. And we don't know a lot about these. I don't want to speak too out of line. Who knows who these people are? But some news reports are citing ICE activity at schools. There was a report in the Columbus Dispatch that a man was tackled on a bicycle. What crime can someone conceivably be committing while on a bicycle? It's just, if these are really the worst of the worst, it is incumbent on the Trump administration to prove that. And the evidence before us, the limited evidence that you can get from an agency where its agents are wearing masks at any given time, is limited. That case has not been made.
Stanley, 53% of Ohioans in a recent poll done by Emerson College in Boston said they support mass deportations in Ohio. They say it's a good thing. Is this not what voters in Ohio who voted for Donald Trump want?
This is what voters want, but I think at the end of the day, it's not what should be happening, right? Jake just said it. Folks should not be afraid to call 911. They should not be afraid to go to school. They shouldn't be afraid to go to work. And at the end of the day, that's what's happening. We're putting folks to have to go to the shadows and run from folks when they're just trying to live their life.
Some of these immigrants tell you that they're here on asylum, they're here legally, but they have like appointments with immigration authorities, and they're afraid to go to the appointments which they are required to go to, because if they go there, they're afraid they'll get detained. I mean, what's an immigrant who's here legally, at least temporarily, to do?
I'm not sure, because there's all kind of categories, because there's clearly millions and millions of people who came in when the open borders were happening during Biden as president. And there's a question of what do you do to fix, because clearly some of those people that came in illegally are working hard, paying taxes and being productive. Some are not. Some are costing taxpayers a lot. So it's hard to generalize and say it's all one way or it's all the other way, because really the failure we've had for decades is Congress hasn't really addressed the laws and changed them to adapt to the changing circumstances.
Jake, it's hard to predict the future, but we have not seen the activity that Chicago has seen or that LA has seen, other cities have seen. But if we start to see those videos here in Columbus, might that 53% that supports deportation drop a little bit further? Might we see some legislation proposed to say, let's find a solution for this?
Well, I think mass deportation is something that people conceive of very differently in the abstract of, heck yeah, mass deportation. But then when you actually see what it looks like, when you see masked federal agents who won't identify themselves and are throwing sometimes legal citizens or people with legal rights to be here into vans, those opinions change. And yeah, those opinions change.
All right. Let's get to our next topic. Data centers have become the latest controversy, pitting developers against local residents. Because artificial intelligence needs computing power, data centers are popping up all around the country. Data centers are basically huge computer warehouses filled with servers, hard drives, and routers. They consume a lot of energy to power all that computer's power and a lot of water to regulate the heating and cooling systems. Up until recently, communities have welcomed them, but lately communities are pushing back. Jerome Township and Washington Township here in central Ohio, those trustees in those townships have passed temporary moratoriums on data centers. Jake Zuckerman, what's happening? These things popped up like 10 years ago. I saw one in Hilliard, fairly near where I live. Pretty harmless, looks like a warehouse, no big deal. Now they're evil in some communities. What's going on?
Well, let's think about them. I mean, for one, you got to understand, for about 10, 20 years, the city of Columbus, our power demand was flat, because as more people come, we've gotten more efficient, so we don't even need more power for those more people who are here. All of a sudden, the city of Columbus needs more power than the entire city of Manhattan. I mean, it's a skyrocketing demand for electricity that puts upward pressure on all of our electric bills. Meanwhile, the state is subsidizing these through sales tax credits. The federal or the local governments are giving them property tax abatements. All of that pushes a tax burden on people. It pushes an electric bill burden on people. And what do these things provide? They don't employ very many people. They don't do a whole lot for anyone. What's the point? What is in it for the people who have to live nearby them and deal with the noise and deal with some of those other externalities you mentioned?
But computers are here to stay, Terry. Artificial intelligence is here to stay. We need these data centers to make these new systems work. Where do we put them?
Well, there's a lot of pro-con arguments, and I talked to somebody that lives near one of the proposals in the Dublin area, and there's concern about the noise or buzz associated with these centers, which might or might not be true depending upon how it's set up and operated. But part of it, it seems like New Albany is doing well with tons of data centers there, but they tend to be at a distance on the far east side away from the residential areas. So clearly there's things that need to be negotiated and worked out. And on the power side, the good news that a number of these locations are being located on or near major gas lines because they want to produce their own electricity. So some of the estimates of we'll need as much electricity here as Manhattan might not come out true, because there's things proposed but might not actually happen. But if they can generate their own power, if they're efficient in water use, it might not be as bad. But how do you position them, particularly if they're too close to residential areas?
Stanley, is this going to be a case where the data centers end up being in rural areas? or in lower income areas, and they're not going to be in a community like Washington Township, which is Dublin, or Jerome Township, which is near Dublin.
I mean, I think they're going to be all over. They're already starting to pop up all over the state. I don't think they're going away. I mean, I liken these data centers to like railroads. They are the railroads of the 21st century. Instead of shipping metal, we're shipping information. And so it's something to watch. And, you know, I think with the tax breaks that are being given out, we're going to continue to see, you know, folks be around.
And I think you make a good point. It's the railroad of the future, so you can't ignore it. It also brings lots of jobs. And there are a lot of, on these data centers, huge numbers of jobs and revenue created in the construction of them. The actual jobs, and I've talked to the mayor of New Albany about it, the actual operating jobs are kind of limited, but he makes the point that it helps attract other technology-related things, which generates more jobs. So you just can't rely on the past, because sadly there's people in Youngstown waiting for the steel mills to come back. They aren't coming back. This is part of the future, but how do you manage it so it impacts in a positive manner?
Springfield is a community that wants these data centers. The old LexisNexis facility, they want to put a data center there. So they've offered tax abatements, 100% property tax abatement for 15 years. The school department says it will start to collect the tax money 15 years from now. Are data centers going to be what they are 15 years from now, what they are now? I mean, 15 years is a lifetime in this technology.
Well, and in the data centers, it's basically a giant open warehouse, and it's easy for a CEO someplace else to snap their fingers and have all the equipment moved out in a few days. So there are some questions. It's not like a steel mill or an auto plant where they've got a huge amount of fixed assets there. So there are a lot of policy questions. Again, there's pro and con to consider.
So people also want the investment too.
Absolutely.
And I think that's the other part. Some of the companies, I mean, Valter, Google's another one where they're investing in the community. They're listening and working with the communities too. And so, you know, folks want in on that. Springfield's one.
But there's relatively few jobs, Jake, and they're, like Terry said, they're warehouses. They can be taken apart pretty easily. Should communities say, you can put your data center here, you can use the electricity and your water in my area, but we're not going to give you a tax break? Is the data center not going to locate there? And would it be a big loss if it didn't locate there?
Yeah, well, there are two different questions baked in there. There's a question of, you know, should these data centers be here at all? And I don't think anyone is really waving the flag saying abolish the data centers, burn them all down. But I think there's a legitimate question here of why are we so, I mean, these are the wealthiest, these are companies that have market caps bigger than most countries. Why are we giving them these property tax abatements? And if the answer is because they might go elsewhere, who really loses? I really question the loss to the citizenry if Google chooses not to invest here.
But when you're a state that's known, I mean, part of the question, it's been drug out on the Intel plant. I still think it's going to come and produce the jobs. But if you're into some forms of technology, it does send a message out that you're with it and you're focused on the future. So it does attract other jobs. Plus the construction jobs are major and all the spin-offs of the suppliers. So there's trade-offs, but again, what's the alternative? Because you just can't sit there and wait for a return to the past.
I would add here just to add on that point, besides the construction of the facilities, there's apparently a ton of work. The chips need to be replaced. They only last a few years, so that brings a ton of union work. The unions tend to support these, so just to balance things out a little bit.
Interesting. It's an issue that's going to continue to percolate, especially in the rural areas of Ohio. Anyway, as 2025 comes to a close, the campaigning for the 2026 election will begin to intensify. It appears the two major party candidates for governor are set, even though technically the candidate filing deadline is still several weeks away. A lot of top Republicans have lined up behind Vivek Ramaswamy in his race against Amy Acton, but two notable Republicans have so far not endorsed the businessman. Dave Yost, who briefly ran against him, has not endorsed him yet, and Governor DeWine, who says he's waiting to learn more about Ramaswamy's vision. On the Democratic side, two notable Democrats have not endorsed Acton. Former Congressman Tim Ryan has yet to endorse her. He, of course, considered running against her in the primary. And former Senator Sherrod Brown, who's running again for Senate, has not officially endorsed her. Terry Casey, to the Governor DeWine reluctance to endorse Vivek Ramaswamy, is there something there? Because he wanted Jim Tressel to run for governor, I think is pretty much a given. He wanted a primary opponent for Vivek Ramaswamy. Is that why he's not endorsing him?
Well, I think part of it, there's negotiations that go on because there's programs that he started. There's people that work in his administration. So this is all part of the negotiation. But the good news from my sources, they're talking very frequently about different issues and aspects of running state government. And also sometimes on both sides, Democrat and Republican, you figure I'm going to wait till when people are paying more attention. Why announce an endorsement between Thanksgiving and Christmas when nobody's paying attention? Wait till a little later when it's more important. And the biggest thing on the whole business of the governor's race is we're getting very close, probably by mid-January is the cutoff point before the early February filing, where you got to announce your lieutenant governor running mate because you can't file a petition just for governor. You got to have a running mate there. And I've heard names around, but we're getting awful close by mid-January. They're going to have them announced.
Yeah, I think it's the same thing as what Terry just said. It's going to come, right? I think realistically, Tim Ryan's going to jump in. Sherrod Brown's going to jump in. I mean, Sherrod Brown has gone as far to essentially put Kathleen Clyde over the Ohio Democratic Party. And so with that, it's going to come at some point. I think it's just a matter of when.
DeWine mentioned in one of the interviews that the filing deadline is still a little ways away, Jake. Is he still holding out hope that maybe there'll be a competitive Republican primary for governor, someone who's more in the establishment lane like he is?
Well, I mean, he hasn't endorsed Vivek, but he did say, I'm going to endorse the Republican candidate, and it seems all but certain that Vivek is the Republican candidate. So you can do a little mental jujitsu there. But I think one of the more interesting things going on is this Republican attack line of Amy Acton is, she's the COVID queen, she's lockdown Amy, et cetera, et cetera. But behind every single decision she made, often the signature on the page next to hers was Governor Mike DeWine. So I think that that's at least something the governor would have to talk about if all her actions were as his employee, stop beating up on my employee if I'm going to endorse you.
Well, he said it then, and he said it again recently in reports that the buck stopped with him, Terry. He says, she didn't do anything that I didn't say was okay. And of course, he's the governor, and she worked for him. So as part of the negotiations, don't pick on Amy Acton about COVID too much for Vivek?
Well, part of that's going to happen anyway, because in politics on both sides, people do things to feed the base. There's things people do to go after ticket splitters and more moderates, D's and R's. So there's lots of messaging thrown around there. And the big thing is when you run for governor, people want to know, what's your vision for the future? What are you going to do? How can you answer questions on school funding, on how you're going to run the prisons, keeping the highways clear, this little thing called property taxes. Governors, you can't just do the national ideology and spin. You've got to do specifics, including for areas of Ohio.
And that's what Amy Acton's going to have to start doing, Stanley. I mean, we know her as health director. We know who she's solid on health, but we don't know where she really stands on education. At least most people don't. Education, workforce development, property taxes, and how to keep them from rising.
Affordability. I mean, I think that's another one that's going to be, and that should be one of her top priorities and top platforms. And so, I mean, I think the platform hopefully comes out around January, and hopefully right after that, you see some more endorsements roll in as she also builds momentum to announce whoever is going to be her lieutenant governor as well.
So when do we start to see we already I've seen some digital ads, I couldn't tell if it was a negative ad on John Husted or a positive ad on John Husted on digital. When do we start to see the ads? Well, it was an outside group.
You're going to see some of it, but with probability of no meaningful or significant primary, people are going to be waiting their money until later on, more in the summer and more in September and October. Because why waste it because political things change so fast these days, the shelf life goes out in literally a day or two. So you don't want to waste too much too early.
But that poll showed that 38% are unsure about John Husted. That gives an opportunity for Husted to introduce himself or his opponents to give another side of John Husted as on a negative light. Right?
Well, but you could also argue in the poll where there was some tightening in the governor's race, things didn't tighten much for Sherrod Brown. So Sherrod's got a problem. He still looks like the old generation and an awful lot of voters. The good thing, depending upon your viewpoint, on governor, we're going to have a new fresh face and new ideas. Both candidates come from that direction. But in the Senate race, it's more the guy that was there in Congress for 3 or 4 decades versus the guy that just got there and wants to do change and is clearly younger.
Or was in state government for 2.5 decades. So anyway, the last couple of years, state lawmakers have become very involved in what is taught on college campuses. The anti-DEI law passed earlier this year bans diversity programs on public campuses and enacted policies designed to encourage more conservative teaching and dialogue. A couple of years ago, lawmakers mandated Ohio colleges train future teachers in the science of reading, basically phonics. The law banned teaching programs from including other reading methods in their curricula. This week, Governor DeWine pointed out that about a third of Ohio colleges are still not complying with that law, and that does not sit well with him.
For some universities, cultural, it's set in. They've used it. They've taught another way for a long, long period of time, and it's tough to change. Look, it's tough for professors that have been teaching one way to teach another way. But it's also tough for teachers who are out in the classroom who now have to switch over. And so, it's just a moral imperative that we get this right, and we get it right damn fast.
Damn fast. Jake Zuckerman, this is the issue that gets Mike DeWine fired up, the science of reading. It's not like getting guns away from dangerous people or redistricting or property taxes. It's the science of reading. What's going on here?
Yeah, well, I mean, if we just take it on its face, there's a law that says what colleges have to do. They're not doing that per the audit that the governor cited, and here he's trying to use the bully pulpit to get him in line. I think there is kind of an interesting subtext. You mentioned Senate Bill 1, and a lot of what Senate Bill 1 is giving the state this new panopticon view of all colleges and saying, if we don't like what you're teaching, if we feel you're kind of ingraining some kind of ideology into students, we can take your money away. And this does feel like a little bit of a shot across the bow of colleges of like, hey, we are watching. We pass these laws and we plan to enforce them.
Stanley, some big colleges are on the list of non-compliance, at least not fully complying. Ohio State, Ohio University, Bowling Green. Ironically, Defiance College is defying the state law. What do you think is going on there? Are they just reluctant to change, or are they defying the law?
I think that they currently are just reluctant to the change. I think it's going to happen. I mean, you look at Ohio State, they were one of the first ones to implement Senate Bill 1 before it was Senate Bill 1 that passed. And so I think that we're going to continue to see them start to roll in, have a little bit of defiance. But I think the interesting part about all of this is that, we have a lot of folks in the legislature who probably have never been in classrooms. They're essentially demanding that teachers and education teach a certain way. And so for me, that's always just ironic.
The banning other methods from being taught. I understand wanting to. The science of reading seems to be proven. It's established fact. It's the best way for kids, especially kids from disadvantaged backgrounds, to learn how to read. But there are other English language learners who might benefit from other methods. Why ban the other side from being even taught?
Well, I don't know whether banning it's right, but clearly encouraging, because you look at education, and that's one of the biggest things the state of Ohio is responsible for, K through 12 and higher ed. But getting reading right is so important. I remember our son, my wife and I talked about it this week. Initially he was doing it the one way, and then when they switched to the phonics, it really picked up and it clicked. So clearly, but for students, you're literally shortchanging them if they can't come out, especially around 3rd or 4th grade, being able to read, because then you're literally handicapping them for life, and how are they ever going to recover? So this is an important topic, and having the governor using the bully pulpit, I think, is a good thing to wake people up. And also, when you read the story, there's some of the universities that aren't quite up to where they are, but a lot of them were making some pretty good progress. So I think this is just...
He's still mad, though, Terry. He's swearing there. I don't think I've heard him swear.
Well, that isn't all bad to get fired up.
So is this it for Jake, or are there other things that lawmakers want to get involved in how colleges teach?
Well, I mean, I think there's, it's an interesting question of does it take a long time for institutions to change, or is this outright defiance? That will become clearer, and I think if it turns out to be the latter, if it is defiance, how hard are lawmakers going to wield the stick? I guess that's a 2026 question.
And also on Senate Bill 1, enrollment suddenly didn't drop off because of Senate Bill 1. There was all this doom and gloom predictions. And actually some of the colleges, this could help them, because remember the OSU Arts and Science chair was making a comment, a program I watched earlier this year, And he basically was acknowledging we've got a lot of, including foreign languages, programs with very few students in, but we'll take money from the other programs and subsidize them. Well, the universities could be more efficient and serve the students better if you focus into where the market demand, where the students are interested.
I guess the question is, should the market decide that or should lawmakers decide that?
Well, but sometimes in the academic world, they ignore the marketplace.
All right, let's get to our final off-the-record parting shots, and Stanley Gates, you're up first.
I wish I could just say Merry Christmas, but in Columbus and other parts of the country right now, 6 days before Christmas, some families are being torn apart. Some families are worried if they're even going to be able to see their family during Christmas. And so, for me, I just want to make sure that folks know at the end of the day, this isn't safety. This is trauma that's happening currently in Columbus and other parts, again, of the country. And I just want to say I proudly stand with our immigrant community.
This past week, there was a lot of media attention on Les Wexner, Jeffrey Epstein, OSU, and Dr. Strauss. Some of them are not that connected, but they did a media conference in front of the Woody Hayes Center, trying to take Wexner's name off there and showing a big check signed by Jeffrey Epstein. But really, this is a power play, and maybe they'll get it resolved in 26 of how much is Ohio State willing to pay out to the trial lawyers and the victims of the case. There's a lot of PR spin going on, and today, when we see more release from the Justice Department, maybe there'll be something in with a Columbus connection, maybe not, but the story's going to go and maybe get resolved next year.
Jake.
Governor Mike DeWine is ending his year by apparently the use of the veto pen to get rid of intoxicating hemp beverages and signing into law, or at least allowing into law, restrictions on voting rights in Ohio. So what a way to end a year. All
right. My off-record comment tonight, we say goodbye to someone who has been with this show for our 20 years, someone you have never seen on this show. Our director, George Levert, retires after 26 years at WOSU, has produced programs like In the Know, The Quiz Show, WOSU's Auction, remember that? He's produced pieces for Columbus Neighborhoods, where he's also portrayed a cigar-smoking, whiskey-drinking historical figure. But for us, he has been the steady hand, picking the shots, lining up the video and graphics to make sure this show runs smoothly. We thank him for his work and wish him well. That's it for this week. My thanks to our panel and our guest. I'm Mike Thompson. Have a good week.